What if your pain isn't chemical, but existential? What if the anxiety you feel isn't just a serotonin problem or a dopamine imbalance or something that needs to be corrected, but a signal that something deeper is missing? You see, we've become very good at managing symptoms. We regulate the nervous system, we optimize sleep, we exercise, we meditate, we take medication, we go to talk therapy. And all of these things do matter. But what if underneath the biology and psychology, there's another layer entirely? Because here's something that we don't talk about enough. Human beings can tolerate an extraordinary amount of suffering, if that suffering has meaning. But when suffering feels random, disconnected, or pointless, that's when it becomes unbearable. And I think that's what's happening right now. Not just individually, but culturally. We're living in one of the most materially comfortable periods in human history. More safety, more technology, more convenience, more access to knowledge than any generation before us. And yet anxiety is rising. Depression is rising. Hopelessness is rising. Suicide rates among young people have climbed dramatically over the past decade. If comfort was enough, if that was the answer, we should be thriving. But comfort without meaning feels empty. And emptiness is heavy. There's a growing sense of disconnection in the modern world. The shared sources of meaning that once grounded people, like religion, stable communities, clear moral frameworks, long-term careers, strong cultural narratives, all of these have weakened. We're more connected digitally than ever before, but many people feel less anchored psychologically. From a psychological perspective, meaning rests on three core pillars. You have purpose, significance, and coherence. Purpose is the sense that your life is moving towards something. Significance is the belief that your existence matters. And coherence is the feeling that your experiences make sense as a part of a larger story. And when those three things are strong, people are resilient. But when they fracture, people drift. And drifting is exhausting. Young people seem to be the most affected by this. Rapid technological change has created a world that moves faster than identity can stabilize. Careers are fluid. Relationships are fragile. Online culture rewards visibility over depth and performance over character and comparison over authenticity. Sociologists describe our era as liquid modernity, a condition in which social forms no longer stay solid enough to provide lasting orientation. Careers are temporary. Relationships are provisional. Geographic mobility is constant. Identities are endlessly flexible. And there's freedom in all of this, but there's also instability. Because identity needs continuity. It needs resistance. It needs something solid to push up against. And when everything is fluid, it becomes harder to answer simple but profound questions like, who am I? What am I building? Where is this going? And at the same time, digital technology has transformed our relationship to time and desire. So in a world of instant gratification, endless scrolling and constant notifications and immediate entertainment, desire becomes short-cycled. Attention fragments. Patience weakens. The future becomes abstract. Long-term goals require imagining a future self and working steadily toward it. But when the mind becomes conditioned to immediacy, the future self feels distant and unreal. And when the future feels unreal, purpose thins out. You don't wake up one morning and declare that your life has no meaning. Instead, it shows up as a low-grade disorientation. You feel busy but not oriented, connected but not anchored, stimulated but not fulfilled. This isn't a chemical problem, it's an existential one. Psychological research consistently shows that a lack of meaning strongly predicts depression, hopelessness, and even suicidal ideation. People who report low meaning in life report fewer reasons for living. Existential fatigue sets in the sense that nothing is worth doing. When meaning erodes, people look for substitutes like escapism, addiction, constant distraction, but substitutes don't satisfy, they just numb. And numbness deepens the void. And this idea isn't new. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust, built his life's work around this insight. In the concentration camps of Nazi Germany, he observed something remarkable. So those who lost hope, who believed their suffering had no purpose, they deteriorated rapidly. But those who could anchor their suffering to something beyond the present moment, such as like a loved one, a future task, a spiritual conviction, had a greater chance of survival. Frankl concluded that the primary human drive is not pleasure and not even power, but meaning. And he later wrote, those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. And Jordan Peterson builds on this idea. He argues that the answer to suffering is not happiness, but meaning. Because suffering is inevitable. Life includes loss, illness, failure, betrayal, and death. And if your goal is to eliminate suffering, you will lose. But if your goal is to orient yourself towards something meaningful enough to justify it, you can endure far more than what you think. And that doesn't mean suffering disappears. It means it transforms. There's a difference between pain that feels random and pain that feels purposeful. If you believe your struggle is shaping you, it's making you stronger, wiser, more capable of helping others, the same pain feels different. It becomes a teacher instead of a punisher. And this is something I have experienced personally. When you're in the throes of anxiety and depression, there's a layer of suffering that techniques alone just don't reach. You can regulate your breathing, you can challenge distorted thoughts, you can optimize your habits, and all of these things do matter. But eventually, you run into a quieter question. What is this for? And if you can't answer that, the suffering feels absurd. But if you can say, even tentatively, that this period is shaping you, something shifts. The struggle becomes part of a larger narrative, and narratives matter. The human mind is a meaning-making machine. We're always telling stories about who we are and what our lives represent. And when those stories collapse, identity destabilizes. Modern life fragments narrative. We consume disconnected images, compare ourselves to curated fragments of other people's lives, absorb ourselves in endless information without any integration. Fragmentation feels like emptiness. Meaning is the opposite of fragmentation. Meaning integrates. It ties past, present, and future together. It says, even in this suffering, this fits somewhere in a larger story. Research consistently shows that people with a strong sense of meaning report higher well-being, lower anxiety and depression, greater resilience, even better physical health. Meaning acts like a psychological immune system. It doesn't prevent difficulty, it protects against despair. And here's the critical point. Meaning isn't discovered accidentally, it's constructed. It emerges from responsibility, from commitment, from choosing values and living by them. Meaning is found at the intersection of responsibility and suffering, as Jordan Peterson says. When you voluntarily take responsibility for people, for work, for something beyond yourself, difficulty is inevitable, but that difficulty is meaningful because it serves something larger than comfort. Comfort alone does not produce strength. Meaning does. So if you're feeling lost, anxious, disconnected, the question may not simply be, what's wrong with my brain? It might be, what am I oriented toward? Do you have a direction? Do you have something that justifies your effort? Do you have a story that integrates your suffering into a coherent future? This doesn't require grandiosity. It doesn't mean saving the world. It might mean becoming someone reliable, supporting a family, mentoring someone younger, building something useful, living by a set of values with integrity. These aren't cliches. These are structural components of psychological stability. We live in a time where old sources of meaning have weakened faster than new ones have formed. Technology accelerates change, communities fracture, shared narratives dissolve. But the need for meaning hasn't gone anywhere. Meaning does not erase pain, it recontextualizes it. It turns adversity into preparation, confusion into direction, suffering into something that isn't wasted. The question is not whether life will involve suffering, and most certainly will. The question is whether that suffering can be tied to a purpose. Because when it is, human beings can withstand almost anything. And perhaps the most radical act in a distracted, fragmented, hyper-comfortable culture is to deliberately choose depth, to anchor your life to something larger than your mood, to decide that your pain will not be wasted. What if your anxiety isn't just a malfunction? What if it is a signal that your life needs orientation? What if the most powerful mental health tool you have isn't comfort or distraction or optimization even, but meaning? And if that's true, then the work isn't simply to feel better. It's to build a life that makes the suffering worth it. That's a very different project. And it might be the one that actually heals us psychologically, spiritually, and existentially.